Hello, everyone. You can do better than that. Hello, everyone. Hello. That's what we're talking about. We have a great guest today. Come on. So students, staff, faculty, distinguished guests, and friends, welcome to another Impact Speaker Series featuring Buddy Valastro. This is the third Impact Series that we've actually did this semester, which allowed us to showcase leaders, their journeys, and the perspective, how they have their outlook within the organization, companies, and even in the world of business. My name is Willie Reddick, and I'm an Associate Dean of Business Education, and I'm also an Associate Professor of Accounting. Further, which is interesting, I'm actually a prior student. I did my doctorate here at Whitman. So before we get started, I want to acknowledge with respect the Onondaga Nation, firekeepers of the Haudenosaunee, the indigenous people on whose ancestral lands Syracuse University now stands. So, we're excited to host another amazing professional speaker series. The reason why we're doing this and the reason why we're filling this actual auditorium is because we're focusing here at Whitman on primarily integrating into what Whitman does to help prepare our students for the actual business world. It builds bridges with global business leaders who help to provide insight into the type of challenges and opportunities that are taking place within the industry. It also helps reinforce how education that is taking place in the classroom is applicable to the actual real world. So having top executives like our guest here helps reinforce positive role models and inspire about what it takes to be successful in business. And ultimately, it's about making an impact on the education within Whitman, and also, I know we have a few Falk students here too, to help them see how they can be part of the business landscape in the future. So I would be remiss to say that you guys are in for a very sweet treat, no pun intended. So therefore, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our Interim Dean Alex McKelvie of the Whitman School of Management.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. I just want to highlight, what Willie said about how bringing in these distinguished speakers makes such a difference for inspiring and educating our students. And just the fact that we can bring in a lot of these very talented, very accomplished individuals to provide richness, depth, true stories about what made them successful is an inspiration for all of us. And the inspiration part is a big part of our conversation today, where we have celebrity baker, entrepreneur, family business leader, Buddy Valastro. So, Buddy, I'm going to say a few words about you, and then I'll hand it over to you. But I think it's safe to say that you truly are a pioneer in the custom cake movement, as well as the media celebrity part we know. Among your key accomplishments, I'll probably surprise some folks with this, 12 locations nationally, many more cake ATM concepts, restaurants in Las Vegas at the Venetian, Harrah's, and Link Hotel, 4 New York Times bestsellers, 4 hit television series, more than 20 million social media followers, that's internationally, and a whole bunch of new concepts, locations, ideas that you're currently working on or just launched, like the Times Square is pretty new, and a lot more to go. So those are just a few of the highlights, and I think that long list of accomplishments is worthy of a very strong Whitman welcome and a round of applause for Buddy. Thank you. Okay, so a little bit about your background, right? You grew up in the family business. You're a 4th generation baker. You started Carlos Bakery at age 11, a bit early, and then you took over the family business at age 17. At what point and how did you know that you really want to take Carlos Bakery to these great heights?
Well, I want to thank everybody for having me here, and thank you so much, Dean. I'm so excited to be here and be able to talk to you guys. A lot of you might have seen me on television, and I love that I've always been able to inspire people to, whether you want to bake or whether you want to hang out with your family. That was always part of something that made me feel fulfilled. But being here with you guys, talking to entrepreneurs, giving you a little bit more insight into really who I am and how I tick, makes me so excited. And I've been meeting with kids all day. So it really has been an honor and pleasure for me. And I want any of you guys to know that no matter what happens in life and where you guys go, you always never forget where you come from. You always come back and want to touch kids and people along the way. That's the way I was raised. So I just want to start with that. And Carlo's Bakery, for me, it was always me and my dad's dream to make it a household name. I grew up idolizing my dad. I wanted to be a baker like him. And when I was a kid, I used to work, and I was really good for my age. But unfortunately, at the age of 17, my dad got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And I had to drop out of high school to take over the family business and never kind of looked back. I'm an entrepreneur. I was born an entrepreneur. Like a shark smells blood in the water. That's just the way, it's the truth, right? I see opportunity. And you notice that certain people have certain attributes about them or tick a certain way, and that's what makes them who they are. I noticed my first attribute when I was 17, when a switch went off, where after my dad died, a lot of people are like, oh, the bakery's gonna go out of business. You know, I was a kid, I was literally 17. How are you gonna do this? I made a vow to myself and to my family and to my employees that I would die trying. I was gonna work harder and more, and the people who knew more than me, I humbled myself to. I respected, I got down on my hands and knees, I scrubbed, I was the first one in, the last one to leave. I mean, there was days I didn't see daylight. Literally, I would go downstairs and work and come, it's dark in the morning, you leave, it's dark, and that's the way it was. So I think that that's one thing that you learn. I'm a problem solver, right? If I had to give you Buddy Valastro, I like to solve problems, okay? And I don't care how hard I have to work to solve that problem, I go at it, no matter what. And the more you start to have successes, the more you're like, well, oh, why can't it go this way? Why does it have to be industry standard? Or, you know, like, and I'm obsessive compulsive, which is a good and bad thing, right? You know, but I use my OCD that when I want to think about something, I turn that switch on and I just keep da-doom. I'm processing it in my head until I thought about it 100 different ways, 1,000,000 different times, until I know it's the right way. So that's kind of the way I tick, right? My wife is here with me today, who I couldn't do what I do without her. Let's give her a big round of applause. Because she's the one who's got to put up with me ticking different, right? You know what I'm trying to say? She would say she calls me an anomaly. She said, just because of the way I work and the way I am. You know, when I meet with my employees first thing I say to them, I'll never ask you to work harder than me, and I'll never ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. And I think that, you know, you have to lead by example. I'm the type of general that, you know, I'm in the battlefields with the troops. 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm on the line. I know everybody's name. And you know, I'm in my whites and I'm still doing it. And to be honest with you, I don't need to be. Right? I'm successful. I could stay in my house and you know, have coffee with my beautiful wife. But no, my clock goes off 5 in the morning. I'm up and I go to work and I'm ready to go. I'm ready to attack. I'm just ready to, and I get in that car and that's when I start to process. Start to say, all right, what are my problems? What do I got to do? What, do I got to make a cake? Is it got to be giant? Does it got to fit through, you know, a door? Does it got to jump or spin or move? And how am I going to get to do it? Oh, maybe I'm going to use an airbag. How can I take apart a car? Can I do this? Can I do that? But then again, in my mind, there's like an 11-year-old me that feels like there's no impossibilities, because there's not. The impossibilities are the limits that you put on yourself. I always knew from a young age, I didn't do it braggingly, but like I talked to my sisters and they were like, you know, my brother, I always knew he was going to be successful. He had an aura about him. He had a way. He had a thing, you know what I'm trying to say? So I always knew that I was going to be successful. I didn't know I was going to be on TV. I didn't know I was going to be famous, right? But it just kind of happened the way it did. Do you want me to go in?
No, that was good. Because I think, because part of it is, you know, growing up, became great at baking, decorating, that part of the business. But I'll be frank, there's a lot of people who are really good at decorating cakes.
Yep.
And we saw some of the student examples earlier today when they got to do the
Some better than
competition.
others, but no.
I wasn't going to say.
I'm teasing.
You're the expert, right?
I'm funny too. I'm really a lot of fun. You hang out with me, you'll laugh.
I'm stand-up comedian to your list of accomplishments. But part of what's really made you successful has been the business skills, the entrepreneurial skills to really understand what problems to solve, how to solve them, and those have been central to your success. So, knowing you dropped out of high school, how did you work on your business skills? How did you work on entrepreneurial skills? What things did you emphasize?
Well, it started from the fundamentals that my dad instilled in me. You know, I remember my first day at work. He made me go into the bathroom, and I said, "Dad, what am I gonna do? Make cakes? This?" He goes, "No, go clean the toilet bowl." I was like, and honestly, like I grew up, I never cleaned a toilet bowl in my life. Like I didn't even know what to do. And he said, "Why? Do you think you're too good to do it?" And I said, "No." I said, I do it. He says, "You clean that toilet bowl, and you take the same amount of pride as if you're making a cake, like the biggest, beautiful wedding cake." And he said, "No matter what you do in life, if you put that same effort into everything you do, you'll be successful." And I think he wanted me to clean the toilet bowl for two reasons. A, he wanted all the employees to know that just because it's my son, he's not too good to do it, right? But B, I think he wanted me to know what it was like to be the person who had to clean the toilet bowl. And what I mean by that is I have a lot more admiration and respect for the people who do it today at my factory. I know them. I you know what I'm trying to say, and you have to look at it as what it is, right? So I wanted to learn every facet of the business and understand it. I feel like, you know, where I got my skills from, a lot of it, I think you're born with natural ability. You see different angles. You understand things, right? So I remember making donuts. So I was flipping donuts, right? And it was 2 o'clock, and I'm like, what the fuck, you know, what am I doing here? You know, I was like tired and comatose, and I said, but how much money am I really making from these donuts? If I sell every donut, right, you know, we're gonna make 100 donuts, right? I'm here all these hours, 50 cents a donut, there's no money. And if we don't sell all of them, there goes whatever profit you thought you were gonna make. And the supermarket's selling them for half the price. So I said, I gotta make things that these guys can't make. So I said, I gotta start making cakes. Because I was already cake decorating, but I wasn't doing the cakes that you see now. I was doing more wedding cakes and basics. We had a wholesale operation. Date night for me and my wife used to be on a Friday night. My friends were out, you know, going clubbing or whatever. I would be at the bakery till 3 in the morning making wedding cakes. I would line up like, I would do 40, 50 wedding cakes a weekend. All old-fashioned, buttercream, and, you know, like with the bridges and stuff. But I said, can we get this fondant stuff? And I taught myself how to use it. I started making more decorative stuff. I said, so I could take this cake, 3 tiers, cover it in fondant, and instead of selling it for $300, I sell it for $1,000? I'm in. I mean, I didn't go to Harvard Business School, but I know I'm gonna make money, right? I said, and so I started putting my cakes in the windows, and I was lucky. Listen, anybody who tells you that who's successful, who says they're not lucky is lying. You got to be a little lucky. I feel like I'm lucky. I'm like the kind of guy, if I pull up to a restaurant, I'm like, I tell my wife, we're going to get a spot right in front. She's like, oh, never. And then there's a spot there. I'm like, I'm like that kind of lucky. I'm like that kind of guy, right? But, so being in Hoboken, all the magazines were in New York. So a lot of the people who worked for the magazines would live in Hoboken and then take the commute in. And luckily my store was right on Washington Street, so I would always decorate my window with these beautiful wedding cakes. And one day a lady walked by and she worked for Modern Bride magazine. She's like, oh my God, buddy. She's like, I love this cake. She's like, I'd love to feature it. So I was like, oh my God, this is a dream come true, because at the time, when you got married in the 90s, the first thing you did, or you got engaged, you would go out and buy every magazine for dresses, right? All us old people, like, the kids like, what do you mean a magazine? Like you went to a store? And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, that's what we did. But so I never forget my first magazine shoot, right? I went there, and not only did I make them a cake, and I made exactly what they wanted, but I brought 2 bags of cannolis and cookies, because I figured, look, I'm going to butter up the editors, right? They're going to love me. And I told them, oh, you got kids, I'll make your kids birthday cakes and everything else. It was business is relationships. For better, for worse. When Buddy Valastro shakes your hand and say, I'm going to get the job done, whether I lose money, whether I make money, I keep to my word. And those are things that are forever. And I made those relationships, and next thing you know, I'm in that magazine 3 years straight, every single issue. Because they loved me. I brought them cookies, I made beautiful cakes. It was a win-win. Like, it was like being a dream supplier for someone, right? So from that, I never wanted to be on television. Not that I never wanted to be, but I never thought, like, I didn't wake up and say, hey, I want to be famous, I want to be on TV, right? So they started doing these cake competitions, and they would look for bakers to compete. Where would they look? Back then, when there was magazines, right? It's crazy. They would see me. I was in the magazines all the time. So they said, do you want to compete? Again, I didn't go to business school, but I knew that if I'm on TV, it's going to help me sell cakes, right? People are going to see me on TV. Can't hurt. I can't pay for that advertisement. Let me go. Let me start competing. Always about the business. I was always trying to drive the business, right? I remember on my day off, which was Mondays, and my wife will tell you she had all 4 kids on Mondays. I was like, you got to have the kids on a Monday because I got to be at work on Tuesday. Swear to God, I don't know how she did it, but every baby was born on a Monday on my day off. It's true. It's a true story, right? But on my days off, I would be editing pictures of my cakes. I was a one-man band. I would meet with the brides on Saturdays and Sundays. I would make the cakes on Fridays, Thursdays and Fridays. I mean, I would do so much. Running that little bakery, I would jump from table to table to table and simultaneously be listening to what would be going on in the back, okay? Multitaskers are multitaskers, right? I'm to like an obscene, like, I thrive in chaos, okay? I'll be talking to you about the wedding cake, right? And then I'll hear in the back them talking about, oh, where is the Rodriguez birthday cake? I'm like, excuse me, it's on the first rack in the walk-in box over there, because I knew where every single crumb and everything was, and I was meticulous like a lunatic about it, but I knew it. And it worked in harmony, right? So when I got on TV for the first time, it was my 3rd competition. It was a wedding cake competition. I'll never forget it. And at the time, I wasn't doing like sculpted cakes. I was doing more wedding cakes because that's where the money was. Another thing, right? Where are you going to charge somebody for the most money to get a cake? It's your wedding. It's your special day, right? You might not spend $2,000 on Johnny's birthday cake, right? You're going to spend a couple bucks, but on a wedding cake. So again, I always had the business to understand where the money was, right? It was instinct, you knew. So when I got on the wedding show and I did the competition, I killed it. I made a beautiful cake. I was done 2 hours early. I made a groom's cake, and I lost the competition. I didn't think I should have lost, but you know what I'm trying to say? And it's funny because I lost, but then I won, and you'll understand why in a minute. So I lose the competition. The camera guy who's filming me all day, his name was Tony. I'll never forget it. He said, man, buddy, you were great today. I'm like, yeah, but how did I lose? He goes, no, not your cake, you. I go, Tony, what are you talking about? He goes, you are charismatic. He goes, you need your own television show. He goes, when you watch a show, you're going to pop on camera. You were so much better than the other competitors. You like, people are going to want to like hang with you and have a beer. He's like, I could see it. Like you remind me of something. So I'll never forget. I went home to my wife, right? And I was a little nervous to tell her. And I was like, you know, the guy Tony kind of told me I should get a television show, and I kind of like rolled over. You know, and I was like, I thought she was sleeping. I didn't think she was listening to me. And I'll never forget it. She said, you will. And I rolled back. I was like, what? What do you mean? What do you mean I will? What do you mean? And she said, I almost hate you for it. She said, but if you set your mind to something, you do it. She's like, you don't know how to fail. And if you really want this, you're going to do it. She's like, do you really want this? And I was like, I think so. Like, I was like, I thought of my life. I thought it was funny. I thought of like my family and what I did. So I called Food Network, and I'm like, I got your next hit show. 100-year-old bakery. I pitch them Cake Boss. They're like, we don't think it's that good. They're like, keep doing challenges. So I was like, okay, you know, listen, I was doing real estate. I was buying real estate. I was running a business. I was, you know, I did okay before I was the Cake Boss. It wasn't like, you know, I just like, you know, I was always thinking, and I was always wanting to do more. And one day, 2008, I get a phone call. I was on my bench, and it was like a Thursday or Friday, and I was like, you know, I would have my bench in the back, and I would watch like 25 people would be working and making all the cakes. My sister Mary's like, buddy, TLC's on the phone. So I'm like, TLC? I'm like, who, the band? I'm like, who the hell's TLC? They need a cake? I didn't know. I swear, this is a true story. I was like, oh, they need a cake? You know, because I make cakes for everybody. So I pick up the phone, and they're like, you know, we saw you. We were looking for a baking show. Somehow we came across footage of you on that third challenge, the one that I lost. They're like, what do you think? I said, well, I got a good idea for a show. I pitched some Cake Boss. I told them. They're like, take a camcorder, run it to LA, and send it over. I do. So send it over to LA. Next day they call me. They're like, we want you. They're like, who's your agent? I'm like, me. I'm like, you're talking to him, right? So now you got to understand something. That doesn't happen in TV. If you go on TV, usually you go to a production company, you pitch them, oh, I'm Buddy, I want to do a show, and then they go around and try to sell it. Total opposite happened. So at the time, the production company was doing challenge. I really liked this one producer. Me and this guy, Art, spoke about the show because we were going to try to pitch it to Food, who said no. So I said, I want these guys to do the show. But I talked to Art, and I'm like, Art, I don't know if I want to be on TLC. I'm like, I think we should be on Food. I'm a chef. I'm like, I'm going to be the only guy who cooks on TLC. So I'm like, call Food Network. Tell them I got a contract. He calls them, and they're like, we don't think Buddy's that good. They could have him. So now I was like, now they got to pay. I was like, so when we did Cake Boss, which was the best thing that ever happened because Discovery owned TLC, where they're in 225 countries and territories all over the world, where Scripps was only like 10 or 15. So they were like this ginormous giant compared, but I didn't know. Again, what do I know? I'm a baker. Right? I had no idea. So I wind up going, we were lucky. We got a good lead in. That was when John and K+8 was having all the trouble. They put Cake Boss on behind that. It's a true story. Listen, luck is luck. Okay, luck is luck. You gotta call it what it is. But Cake Boss aired, and it was a #1 cable show, #1 food cable show ever on cable television. It had higher ratings than anything ever happened on the Food Network, ever, season 1. So, whoever got fired for that, sorry, I guess it was that. And then, the crazy thing about it, it went to 225 countries and territories all over the world, dubbed in 45 languages, seen by almost 1 billion people worldwide. And I'm like, pinch me, like, is this really my life? Like, is it crazy? Like, I just, and the truth of it was, I'll never forget where I knew I was making a difference. I was in Brazil, and I went to Brazil, and I met a kid through like a Make-A-Wish Foundation. Her name was Duda. And she came up to me, she was like a 10-year-old little girl, and she was just going through chemo treatments, and she gave me this big hug, and she was so excited to meet me, and she says, you know why I love you, buddy? I said, why? She said, because when I watch you, I think I could do anything in this world. She's like, you inspire me to do anything. And the truth of the matter is, like, I never thought about it, but when I did Cake Boss, that's me being me. I want to make a cake that can move or jump or so it was touching people in a different way than just being a stupid cake show. Where I said, now I'm going to push myself harder and make crazier cakes. We did over 300 episodes of Cake Boss. We've done, I've done thousands of hours of television over the years. And again, here's the entrepreneur part, right? So when I started filming, after like 2 weeks with the crew, I was telling the camera guys, oh, no, come over my shoulder, talking to producers about the A, the B, the C story, exactly what you're doing. So I got it. I get things quick. It's either, like I'm hip to the scam, right? You know what I'm saying? Like I know what happens quick. So I said to the camera guy, so how long have you been working for the production company? Oh, I don't work for the production company. So what do you mean? He goes, I'm an independent contractor. Okay. The audio guy, how long you been working? Oh, I'm an independent contractor. The producer. So I said, well, who the hell works for the production company? And they're like 1 or 2 guys. So let me get this straight. I could open my own production company and hire you people to make the same, because that's who's making the show, and make a lot more money? Yeah. So that's the entrepreneur, the shark smelling blood. Okay, but he's got no one to attack, right? I had to wait, because your first contract, forget about it. Your first contract, you might as well, here's my firstborn. You could have him too. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's part of what it is, but you got to know that after time, and then you have some leverage, you say, all right, by the way, I want this, and my production company is going to be producing all my content or co-proing it. And that's how I got into the production company business, and since 2014. And then, with that being said, then with bakeries, well, I just want to talk a couple things like, all right, failure. I failed. I didn't know what failure was until like 2014, 15, right? And I never thought that I could fail, because I always outworked my problems. And what do I mean? I had to close bakeries. We opened bakeries, but we made real estate mistakes. And when you make real estate mistakes, it took me time to be able to ingest that, because I was like, no, I'm going to go to the bakery. I'm going to work there for a week. I'm going to fix everything. It's going to get good. Yeah, if I would have stayed at that bakery, it would have been great, right? Or you go to this local restaurant in Syracuse that's so great. What do you see? You see there's somebody there. There's the mama, the matriarch, the patriarch, the person who lives and dies in that business that makes that business what it is. It's not scalable, right? Realistically, it's not scalable. So I learned that when you do a business, you have to have a plan that, like, we focus our businesses and our growth now on tourist destinations. We want to be we just opened the store in Times Square. We're in Vegas. We're in places where that you can't lose. And to rewind 15 years ago, a mall was a good place to have a business. How many of you go to malls now? Right? You know what I'm trying to say? So like that, you know, everything is about real estate. And in the beginning, I was afraid. I'm like, how much? Well, $500 a square foot? What are you, crazy? You know? But if there's going to be traffic every day, I pay $1,000 a square foot because you know it's guaranteed. And as long as you can mitigate those costs, it's worth it, right? So it's important to learn from your failures, learn what you did wrong, and you got to be a survivor. Like I'm a scrappy survivor, so COVID, okay? What am I gonna do? Well, I can't sit home. My wife, you know, I would go nuts, like scratching the ceilings, like I gotta go. I'm always on the go. So we did a tremendous e-commerce business. And I had no employees that wanted to work. I was there with just like my core guys. I called my wife. I said, you and the kids, nobody's doing nothing. I'm like, everybody's got to come to work. So my wife and kids during COVID worked the production lines with my sisters, my nieces, my nephews, everybody, you know, and we started to develop things. Like I learned that my production line, so like Christmas week, we ship out 30 to 40,000 packages, okay? We go through about 650, 750,000 pounds of dry ice. That's 38 tractor trailers of coolers. Think of the logistics. You guys are in supply chain. Do you know who, like during COVID too, the guy with the dry ice was like, I don't know, you know, COVID. I'm like, listen, I don't care about COVID, man. You better have my ice. I don't care what you got to do. I don't care if you got to pay Eskimos or whatever you got to do, you get me the ice. I'm like, all right. Okay, well, what's got to happen? You got to get me ice, okay? So and that's about delivering. That's about me telling Goldbelly that I'm going to be able to facilitate that I deliver, because Buddy Valastro delivers when it's impossible, right? So like, we had a line that I was actually really proud of my son Buddy. This Thanksgiving, he ran it. I developed a line for packaging cakes. We would package 21 cakes a minute. Okay, and it would go on a conveyor line right into a tractor trailer stacked. We would do a 53-foot trailer in about an hour. So again, my mind works in lines. My mind works in processes. I do all that, right? And that's what excites me. So by doing those lines, I started to dovetail into retail, right? So now I'm in 4,000 Walmarts, and we manufacture the products. And I wasn't looking, that's the other thing too, is like, I don't look for these things all the time. Sometimes they just come to me. And it started with the vending machines. So I also have about like 200 vending machines out and all over the country. Guy comes to the factory one day, and they're like, there's this crazy guy from Canada here. He wants to see you, wants to talk to you. I'm like, oh, really? I'm like, but it was something, I was like, let me talk to him. So he's like, look, I want to put cannoli in a vending machine. I'm like, it's never going to work. He's like, why? I'm like, because they get soggy. If you fill it, it's a one-day shelf life. It's not going to work. He said, it's a flawed business model. It ain't going to work. I don't want to hear it. I'm like, but maybe cake slices. So I know a cake slice in a clamshell, and again, I'm the cake boss, so people would want to eat my cake. I said, let's try. I said, we'll do cake slices, 4-day shelf life. Puts them in Canada. They sold so many slices, they broke the interface. They couldn't, the credit card company thought it was fraud. They're like, we're just getting so many transactions, we don't even know what it is, because it's not designed for that, right? So I was like, oh my God, this is a good business. I'm like, but my mind as a problem solver says, oh, 4-day shelf life is not enough. So I started studying map packaging, okay? So where we take the atmosphere and control it inside a package by either flushing it with a mixture of nitrogen and carbon dioxide and vacuum sealing it at the same time. Kind of what they do with meat. So now that same cake slice that I invested into the thermoformer that does the packaging, which inevitably also becomes cheaper because you're making your own plastic, right? You wind up getting a 28-day shelf life with no preservatives, just by the way we seal it. So now I'm like, now I got a business, right? And I'm gonna grow these vending machines or whatever. Walmart sees them. And they're like, oh, we want to put the vending machines in Walmart. And again, I'm not like doing cartwheels or backflips. I'm like, I'm in Caesar's Palace, Walmart. You know what I'm saying? Like not that I'm not saying anything bad because they got the masses, but it wasn't like I was like super excited to do it. And they're like, but you have to talk to the bakery buyer because it's a conflict of interest because you're selling cake and they sell cake. Talk to the bakery buyer. And we start going through, you know, what I do. And I told her I get a 28-day shelf life, and she was blown away. She's like, oh my God. She's like, we don't get anything near that. So we start talking back and forth. And I said, look, I'm an innovator. I'm going to send you what I work on. I'm going to send you all the things that are on my, because I'm always creating things. I created a new thing recently, cookies and milk cake, right? So it's a tres leche cake. But instead of having fresh fruit on it, it's got cookies. Because when you eat the cookie and the leche cake at the same time,
good reaction. Yeah,
right? Yeah, I like that.
It's market feedback.
Because you get that, you get the milk squirt in your mouth of the tres leche cake, and because tres leche cake is more of a Latino dessert, Americans don't know it. They don't. When you say, not everybody even knows what leche means, right? So when you say cookies and milk, it resonates. It's like, how do you educate the consumer on it and do it? So that's the way I look at things, right? So when I send out my innovations to Walmart, right, and this is the entrepreneur, right? This is where you'll know. So they're like, we want to have a Zoom meeting with you. So typically the Zoom meetings were 2 or 3 people. All of a sudden, turn the Zoom on, and there's 25 people from Walmart. I was like, oh, I was like, now again, I don't know much, but I must have sparked some interest, right? And they're like, we were blown away by your innovations. We haven't seen anything like that. We want you to come to Bentonville. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Bentonville. Now at the time, you know, we had just got our SQF certification, food safety and stuff like that, so we were a certain level so we could even sell into them. And I wasn't totally sold because I was like, oh man, I'm like, Walmart, they're going to beat me up. They're going to tell me, you know, we don't care what you put in it, slap your name on it, whatever. And I couldn't have been wronger. When I went there, they were so supportive and insisting on it be the same exact cake that it was in my bakery that they're selling in Walmart. And they said, how we could help you is we have a lot of buying power. I was like, yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, you know, if you don't got buying power, who the hell does? You know what I'm saying? Think you're buying a little bit more cream cheese than I am. You know, I'm just saying. But they said we were going to help you buy so that you can still use quality products, not change the integrity of the product, and come into Walmart. And we launched, June will be a year. We're in 4,000 Walmarts. We went from having 5 or 7 SKUs. By the end of the year, we'll have 25 SKUs in Walmart, right? And again, this is where you have to read between the lines and understand. Because of our matte packaging, right? When you go into Walmart, most of the stuff in the bakery, the shrink, anything under 25% is considered good. So you got to think 25% of every cake or whatever is going in the garbage. And they equate for that in how they charge. They have to have enough margin, right? You know, they typically trying to run 40 to 55% margins, right? But that's based on having a 25% shrink or less. Our cake slices in 4,000 Walmarts, we're selling 7 SKUs, 5 SKUs a week times 4,000 stores, okay? And we have a 1% shrink. So think about that sales pitch to the next retailer that you go, right? Oh, you need to make 65%? I'm going to tell you why you can't make 65% and why you don't need to. Because when you sell this other cake slice, you're throwing 25% away. Well, now you're not. 1% shrink. So what does that do? Because internally, what's the goal? The goal is to get the consumer a high-end product at as cheap as you possibly can, because you're going to move volume, right? So, and another thing, right, that you guys all understand, that I talked to some of the professors, Excel. I cannot say how important Excel is. Okay. Now again, I'm a high school dropout. Okay. I mean, and I'm not bragging about it. So I'm a one-finger typer. All right. That basically, I turn the computer on to surf the internet. Usually, if I ask for a report or whatever. But and what's interesting about Walmart, which you probably don't know, is that you're a vendor. They want you to extrapolate all the data and look at the stuff, and you send them the reports weekly. Where if you go to other retailers, you say, oh, well, how's the product doing? Oh, we don't tell you. Like, basically, when we reorder, we reorder. Actually, if you want the data, you got to pay for it. They charge you like there's like ratings for it and stuff. I'm like, really? I'm like, so this guy, because again, the way I'm wired and I tick, I got to learn Excel, right? So, because you run the report from Walmart, and then it's got to go in Excel. So I'm there, Googling how to use Excel. Like, basically, literally, okay? But enough of what I needed to. So next week I get on a call, right? Because I had my people like build reports. So I just had to click the report, and then it would go in, and then I can manipulate the data the way I need it. But I'm going in and I'm telling the people from Walmart, I'm like, listen, we got big problems. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I know that store 552 only sold 2 slices on Saturday and 5 on Sunday. They didn't have the stock. They're like, what do you mean? They go, well, they sold 18 on Monday because they got replenished. And then they didn't sell any. And then I said, I can look at that pattern and tell you 100% when are they busy? Saturday. That's me running a small business. I know that. And they got off the phone, and then the buyer called me back. She's like, I've never had a vendor, because I looked at the whole report. I went through 4,000 stores, and I'm looking at the patterns and looking at the trends. Oh, this one's no good, this one's no good, this one's no good, because I'm crazy, right? I'm obsessive compulsive. That's what I do on a Sunday. My wife's looking at me like, I can't believe you're doing this, but they were so thoroughly impressed with the level of detail. And they're like, you're a celebrity, you're on TV, and this is what you're doing on a Sunday, on your day off. Because that's the heart of an entrepreneur. That's the way you tick, right? And there's the goods and bad, right? Because I know, I'm sorry, I want to get into questions, but that goes with a lot of weight. That goes with having a person that's got to be able to deal with you, right? Like, because I'm always high-paced and pressure and chaos, and I thrive in chaos, you also got to balance panic attacks. You also got to know when to take a breath. You also come home like a zombie, right? I go in waves, in cyclical waves, that when I'm in and I'm trying to make it work, I'm just processing. I'm like a zombie when I come home. And a lot of times my wife and kids will suffer because I missed a birthday, or I had to be in Australia or South Africa, and I couldn't go to his game because of whatever the thing was. But that's the sacrifices that you make for what it is, right? That's the good and the bad. And I had to teach myself how to take deep breaths, how to know when a panic attack is coming on, no medication, where I'm okay and I feel good, right? So like there's times where, like when I was doing this new line for Walmart, I had to get the cakes to 20 cakes a minute. I had to get the package to 100. So I told my wife a week before, I'm like, I'm dreading it. I know I'm going to go, because I knew that I was going to be there 18 hours a day, literally slept in my office the month of December. I didn't leave. I'm a millionaire. Okay? But that's what I did. I slept at the factory, okay, and did what I had to do because I love it. And I'll take it a step further. I wrapped the show on Sunday where I judge, and I love doing TV, but it's so easy. If I just wanted to do TV, compared to making cake slices for Walmart, that's like blood money comparatively how easy it is to make the other money, right? But it's not what excites me, because an entrepreneur loves what they do. And when you find that thing that makes you tick, that makes you happy, that you know and you're passionate about, and you're willing to put everything you got, when you see that success, I mean, it's just so sweet. It's just, you know what I'm trying to say? And with all the accomplishments, my biggest and best accomplishment is my family. Right there. Because without them, I couldn't do what I do. And that's why I do it. That's why I push hard. So.
Great. So we covered a lot of stuff.
Sorry.
We covered a lot of innovations. We talked about failure. We talked about a lot of the retail, the distribution. We talked about some personal things about you. Mm-hmm. So, I have a lot of questions that I'd like to ask, but I also am mindful of time, and our audience here also have questions.
Please.
So instead of asking questions, I think this is a good time for me to hand it over to the students to ask their questions. And then, time dependent, maybe we'll ask a couple more.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So I think we have a couple microphones that are available. Gabriel's there in the middle. So if you put your hand up, you want to ask Buddy a question. Awesome. Please introduce yourself when you ask a question. Do you mind standing, please?
Yeah, no problem. How's it going, buddy? My name is Jared Dowling. I just want to first thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and talk to us. It's been super, super insightful. My question is more of just like a personal question in terms of how you prepare yourself on a day-to-day. Are there any books that you thought were really inspirational during your time becoming an entrepreneur and throughout your professional career, but also any habits that you do on a day-to-day that you feel best equip you to take on the day for anything that might happen?
Yeah, no, that's good. So the two things that I really do that are like my escape or therapy is the car ride to work. I blast the music and I process. The music is blasting, and you'd be crazy the array of music I listen to. I mean, it's pretty funny because I like everything, but I process what my problem is, and no matter how defeated I was the day before. I come home and I'm defeated. I just had a bad day. I just, whatever. When I put that key in that car in the morning and I go, I say, okay, how am I going to kill it? How am I going to fix the problem? And I process and process and process. And that's the one thing. And then the other place where and this is going to sound even crazier, but I get a 2-hour massage every week. Okay? And when I get a massage, I process. I come out of the massage and I'm like, oh, I had the best idea. And my wife's like, but why don't you just relax? Why don't you just shut it off? And I'm like, because I can't. But I feel like I'm getting my head massaged and I'm stimulating, I'm thinking, and I come up with some of my best ideas. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Jared. Next student question. All right, right here.
Hi, my name is Chris Amato, and I'd also like to thank you for your time today. One of the things you mentioned that kind of sticks out is sacrifice. I'm a little bit older, and we kind of grew up with that whole sacrifice thing, but you see on the internet today, everybody talking about, oh, you need to put family first, you need to, not worry about working so much, and all these self-proclaimed gurus. How would you suggest that younger people separate that noise and really try to lean on the experts who've actually did it, who aren't that vocal on social media?
Absolutely. And listen, I can assure you that it's either you have it or you don't. It's an instinct that's what's inside you, right? Where I would die for my family. I would do anything for my family, okay? But I understand that what I'm trying to do is for the greater good of them. right? For long term. I grew up in a world where I worked every Christmas. Christmas morning, I would leave my wife and kids, you know, and have to go to work because I was a baker. It was the life I chose. Bakery's open, you got to be there. You can't, you know what I'm trying to say? Now we close on Christmas Day, so that's a good thing. But the thing is you, if I could give you guys advice, you go to a company, right? Or whether you have your own ideas, the first thing you got to do is identify the problems. You got to figure out where are the problems, and you have to want to solve them. You have to go to the boss or whatever and say, hey, listen, and show them that you're willing to stay and die and bleed and everything else. Believe me when I tell you, when you do that, a boss will reward you. And if you are not rewarded in time, you leave, but you'll take away things from that. You know, I'm not saying that you know, you have to work as hard as I did, but the thing is success is not coincidental. And a lot of the people that I meet, right, because again, I read between the lines. Some of the most successful billionaires, they're crazy. They don't have attention spans. They're a million miles an hour. They're this, they're that. You see attributes that are them. Why? Well, how come everybody who's this is that? It's patterns, right? I mean, it's analytics. You guys are data driven. You go look at it. You go, how many people who work 32-hour weeks is making millions and millions of dollars? And I'm not saying, but again, if that's what you want, there's nothing wrong with it, right? If you want to say, I only want to work 32 hours a week, I'm going to make 100,000, 60,000, 50,000 a year, and I'm fine with that and whatever, that's fine. For me, it's not even about the money. I'm a problem solver. If I watch Jeopardy, I want to answer the questions. It's the way I'm wired, right? So it's like, it's either you want to be a problem solver and you're going to do everything in your power. You almost can't help it. Like sometimes I'll hear problem. I'm like, no, I don't want to hear it because then I'm going to have to process it. I don't want to think about it. I mean, it is what it is. But when you have the moments, you got to cherish them with your family. And you got to do what you got to do. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, I think that there is a balance, but you know, you have to make those decisions on what is you're most comfortable with. So.
Another student question, maybe one, oh great, from the back.
Hi, my name's Katie. I'm a marketing major here at Whitman. I was wondering how the Carlos Bakery business changed day to day after the show started. I know you said you opened the production business, but also just like how your life was changed when you were going into work and working.
Well, I mean, again, you know, it became Christmas Eve every day. Okay, and again, for somebody like me, I'm efficiencies, right? So it's like, all right, how do you facilitate all this? Because you can't make this. How many hours could you stay open? The 7-hour lines, like, you know, I mean, it was tough. I mean, it was crazy. I almost felt bad for me and my employees because we'd have a bench that's 6 feet, there'd be 12 people working because there was nowhere to work. You know, there was only so much space and so much you could do. You know, I mean, we had lines, people that did the lines, and then also we had to let the Hoboken residents cut the line because I didn't want the people who have been there, you know, that was one thing that I did, you know, where I said, if you show Hoboken ID, you cut the line, you know, so because I wanted to take care of the people that supported me all those years. But it was magnified to like insane. I mean, it went, you know, I mean, you couldn't physically make more money or put more people through the door in a day. It was impossible. It was nothing you could do. It was just, I mean, we had megaphones trying to, you know, and again, now, take it a step further, you got fans. You just don't have people who want to buy cake. So they, you know, you go to Disney World, you want to meet Mickey Mouse, You don't want Mickey to be like, all right, get your canola now, get the hell out of here. You know what I'm saying? You want to be like, hey, you know, like it's, so there was that. And then, you know, fame, like, you know, it was like a very surreal moment. You know, people would be waiting in the alley because they knew I would come in through the alley. I would take pictures with people all the time. It almost got where it was distractive because I couldn't not. Look, I always take time for the fans, right? And I believe that. This is my idea, right? My parents raised me that you always be who you are. I can't be a nice guy on television and portray it, and then see you and outside and be like, hey, screw you, I don't want to take a picture with you. Like, it's not the way I was raised. I would never do that. The problem is if I was down in the store taking pictures all day, I can't get anything done. So that was like the yin with the yang. So like I always try to keep public events where I'd be as accessible as I possibly can and really be me so you know who I am. But then, you know, when I'm work, like, you know, I'm working and I'm doing what I got to do. It's hard for me to go to bakeries too now. Like I've been sneaking into the Broadway store on Saturdays, you know, on my day off. My wife's like, it's 5 in the morning. Where are you going on Saturday? I'm like, oh, I'm going to the Broadway store because I want to go work. And I would go and work with the people because nobody would be there that early. So I was able to like actually get time with the bakers and work with them because they see you in the kitchen. They wanted to, it's natural. And I'm not going to be like, oh no, I take a picture, but then I'm not accomplishing what I'm trying to do. So it was tough, but you know, it's balance.
Okay, Don, do we have time for one more question? All right, so I get the lights so I can't see the clock. So one more question. Maybe, I know we have some friends from food studies and nutrition at Falk School. Maybe one of you, if you have a question.
Yeah. Please.
Or if not, well, you know, happy to have other questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right.
Well, I mean, just to touch on that, just because you know what I'm saying, you guys wouldn't know like how much of what you guys do at this school touches my everyday, whether it's food science, right? About how we're doing certain things, you know, certain lab studies that we're doing as far as for shelf life or for mouthfeel of certain things. So, you know, I've learned a lot about food science that I never thought that I would have if you would ask me 20 years ago. So it's hugely important. And Excel.
Please.
Hi, my name's Anna. Thank you for being here also. I'm from New Jersey, so we like grew up on your show.
I appreciate that.
My question is more about baking. Food industry is a hard field to get into. I think that goes with any creative kind of field. So what advice do you have for someone trying to enter or get exposure in that kind of field early on?
Okay, so if you're trying to like run your own bakery, right? It comes down to that same thing of, all right, am I looking to scale this or am I looking for this one? And listen, I mean, my old bakery was a good business. If I just had that, I'd still be making cakes. I'd still be doing okay. Like everything would be okay. But I don't know how much I would have been able to scale it. Right? So, you know, I feel like if you're trying to create a brand of something, like whether you want to have, oh, this is going to be the next Crumble or this is going to be the next, you know, Tate's cookie in the supermarket or whatever, that's a little bit harder, right? Unless you have something that is just, you know, the right product and the right distribution at the right price point and the right time. I mean, we're in an era of social, right? I mean, again, the whole TV landscape from what it was. I mean, like how many of you guys click through channels in this room? Yeah, besides me and the old guy over there. I mean, yeah, well, the two of us, right? I mean, you're right, but how many of you, okay. So think about that. So, you know, where are people advertising? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, if you stream, there's no advertising. You guys are watching TikTok or Instagram Reels, and you're basically streaming. So how do advertisers or you get your product out there? It's influencers. It's like sometimes, you know, I wonder to myself, in 30 years, is a guy like Mr. Beast going to be more recognizable than Tom Cruise? Probably. You know, are people, who's Tom Cruise? No. but you know what I'm trying to say? Like that's what we're faced with in this era. So like my plan of attack for me, right, is now that I see that I have innovation and I have creativity and we're putting out quality, and I see that all the retailers that I go to are really engaged on it, okay? That's where my mind goes to going back to the shark with the blood, right? Because now how do you make this out? How do you quantify this now? What do you do? Well, I look at what I can maximize from my factory, and I know it's only this. But then I say to myself, well, you know, he's got a cupcake in a brownie factory. He's not doing so well. He's got $10 million in sales, but it's up, down, whatever. Okay, listen, I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna be your partner, we're gonna innovate a little bit, you're gonna make my brownie recipes, my things, we're gonna go to Walmart. I got another $20 million worth of business, and we're gonna do that. He's got a bread bakery. Oh, you're not selling that much? We're gonna innovate, we're gonna create, we're gonna do this, whatever. So it's like mergers and acquisitions about disrupting the marketplace that's there. And I'd say in 5 or 10 years, like, goal for me would be able to control 20 to 30% of what's sold in every retail bakery, you know, like supermarkets in the country by doing it. So that's a bigger idea, because I could put my name behind it. We could private label it. I know what I'm good at. I know I can look at things and shake it up and do it. And again, too, then am I going to be looking for a VC? How am I going to want to do it? You know, do you want to be big enough where, like, you know, my next goal is to be able to grow this with my kids. And that's why I got my son here at Whitman School, you know, and my daughter's in University of Delaware in the business school as well. And hopefully Marco is going to be coming here, so that, you know, because I want them to learn those things. I didn't go to school for it. And I do think that you're born with it. But it's about believing in yourself. It's about waking up, making those sacrifices, getting back up after you've been beaten down, and going after it and saying, I'm going to do it. And honestly, I do believe at the end of the day, because in my travels, I was able to, you know, be a global ambassador for Discovery. So I went to like everywhere. I mean, you name it. I mean, I've been all over Europe, all over the Middle East, Australia, Asia, South America, and everything. And I feel like we're still in a country where you have opportunity, you know, because I've seen the world. And I feel like if you work hard, you know, because again, what are the odds of me doing, you know what I'm trying to say, being who I am? But it came down to the core fundamental principles that I still live by. And you guys are the next generation of it. So you guys got to do it. Don't be afraid, just, you know, just do it.
Well, thank you so much for the inspirational advice. I know, oh, there you go. You can do this one. One of the things I particularly liked about this is you covered pretty much every major at Whitman, as well as some at other schools. So, you know, it's great that we, you know, the students who left class to come and listen to this will say, oh, we still covered that content. So one of your last answers talked about the public scene and being available. So that's what's next. So upstairs, first floor, we have a reception. Buddy will be there, Lisa will be there, family will be there. So if you want to talk to Buddy, ask a question you didn't get to ask today, maybe do selfies.
Yeah, absolutely.
The place to do it is not here, but right upstairs, first floor. Just go right up the stairs to the elevator. You'll see it. There's free food, free drinks. And again, please join me in a round of applause for Buddy Valastro.